Hello and welcome to episode 298 of the Total VAR podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. A huge thank you to our TSP Patreon community because we couldn't make the show each week without your support. And of course, we're live streaming this episode on Facebook, X, you'll find us on Twitch, Instagram and YouTube as well. So a very good evening if you're watching along live. Coming up this week on the podcast, our first Friday night football of the season finished with a decent point away at Brighton. But once again, there was only one topic of discussion on the way home. We will get into that very soon. It's a 2-game week this week. We're back at St Mary's on Wednesday night when Chelsea are the visitors. And at the weekend, it's a trip to Villa Park. Chad Williams from the Villa Forever podcast is going to be joining us later to help us preview the Aston Villa game. Now, my name's Martin Starke, and I'm joined on this episode by Glen de la Cour, who is writer of the blog League One -10. Alfie House is senior Southampton reporter for the Daily Echo, and Martin Sanders, aka Football Martin, who you'll recognise from TikTok and YouTube, just generally Saints Mad season ticket holder. So there's loads to discuss this evening. Let's get into the football, shall we? On the face of it, it was a decent point away from home against a top side, but that's kind of only half the story, isn't it? Martin, going to start with you this week. You were there on Friday, the VAR decision. Let's get straight into it, shall we? It was a tough one to take.
Yeah, it was a really tough one to take. Nearly missed it, to be honest, because it took a long time to get down there, pretty much 4 hours from Southampton to get down there. The traffic was so busy. But yeah, VAR. I'm sick of it now. I'm sure every other Southampton fan is right now as well. And how they can disallow that goal, I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. And my phone was going crazy during it, and everybody was sending me screenshots. How many times has this happened? If that had been Liverpool or Man City, it would have never got chalked off, in my opinion. I just think it because it's Southampton, I just feel a lot of decisions are going our way. It just seems a little bit coincidental now, but I was so disappointed because I thought we played really well second half. I didn't think the first half was great, but second half we played well, and we really did deserve to walk out there with a win in the end in that second half. But VAR, where'd you start with it?
It took such a long time as well. I think that's what got my back up, is that I don't know what it was like in that away end. I assume you just like waiting to go crazy again, but it just felt like they took so long.
Yeah, it's 5 minutes. It felt like an eternity, really. And I just knew the inevitable was that we weren't going to walk out with that goal. I just felt it, and longer it went on, there was so much tension within the fan base at that moment in time, and I think everybody around me felt exactly the same. And that the fans were brilliant. You've got to give a massive shout out to our away support this season, because they've just been unbelievable, our fans. And there were wild scenes when that goal went in. The away end erupted. Brilliant from Cameron Archer, because he makes a brilliant run. And I didn't think Armstrong did a great deal wrong, really. How he's causing the goalkeeper, he's not got in the view of the goalkeeper at all, in my opinion. So no. I find it a ridiculous decision. I really do.
If we were just dealing with this one in isolation, Glenn, then you would go, okay, these things happen. But this is 3 games in a row now that we've had dubious VAR decisions go against us. I mean, what is going on?
Well, it is 3 games in a row. We obviously had the Ryan Manning's disallowed goal at Wolves, and the goal that was allowed to stand for Wolves, and both those decisions, PGMOL said were right. Afterwards, after they'd had a chance to review it and come up with a story, they said those decisions were right. We had the penalty not given against Liverpool, which could easily have been given, but wasn't. And we've had this one against Brighton. The Brighton one, I actually wouldn't have a problem with that one being chalked off if the Arsenal goal against us earlier in the season had been chalked off, because they're basically the same in that the cross comes over, the offside player in the middle misses the ball, and the onside player at the back post puts it in the goal. But Arsenal get their goal against us, and we get our goal chalked off. The only difference really is that the Arsenal player who was offside, the ball kind of went over him, and with Armstrong it went behind him. The official reason they've given for the goal being chalked off, because it impacted Verbruggen, as Martin has said, is just bull. That's just rubbish because it doesn't. I mean, what did he think Armstrong was going to do? Flick it with his heel into the top corner whilst he was running at full pelt with the defense. I mean, I'm sure the goalkeeper was thinking, yeah, that's what he's going to do. I better cover that. Yeah. I mean, it's just rubbish. But like I said, if they disallowed the Arsenal goal, I wouldn't have too much of a problem with it. But yeah, it does seem to be stacking up against us, and there's that old cliche about it evens out over the season. Well, we're in for a hell of a season at the second half of the season. We'll end up qualifying for Europe, if we get given all these decisions. But I suspect that we're just part of a big social experiment to prove that cliche is in fact complete rubbish, and it doesn't even itself out at all. I mean, VAR for me, I tried to be a supporter for it for as long as possible, and ironically, it was at Brighton 2 years ago that my thoughts about anything positive about VAR actually died when Theo Walcott's goal got disallowed. And again, a similar thing. It was like 5 minutes, and then they found. I mean, he was level basically, but they disallowed it anyway, and all the joy that had erupted in the stadium in our end just totally went. And the same thing happened this time. They spent 3 minutes looking at the on-field decision, which was offside against Archer. And then when they found that he was actually onside, then it's we'll just look for something else. Let's look for something else. And it just seems that they're going out of their way in this scenario to find something to disallow the goal for. And it's rubbish. I mean, VAR solves some problems, but it causes a hell of a lot of others. It's still very subjective. I mean, in this, interfering with play is a very subjective call. I mean, unless it's one of those ones where the offside player is standing directly in front of the goalkeeper and he can't see round him, it's a very, very subjective call. But yeah, it's I mean, we have to shrug our shoulders and get on with it, but it just seems to be ridiculous. Oh, the other thing was the on-field decision. The explanation to Russell Martin was that the on-field decision carries weight.
Yeah,
and it didn't carry weight against Wolves 2 weeks ago, did it? Where on a collision that could have been given either way, they decided, oh no, we definitely need to disallow that one. So they're basically, if you look at that and you look at the Arsenal goal that was allowed against us, they're basically winging it, making it up as they go along. And when you get 3 weeks in a row like this is when people start saying, well, it's clearly stacked against the team down the bottom, and you can't blame people for thinking that, I'm afraid.
It's becoming harder, Alfie, to argue against that, isn't it? Because to start off with, people say, oh, well, they've got it in for us and they've got it in for the clubs at the bottom of the league. And they haven't really. And then just you see decisions like this on Friday night. Here we are on Sunday evening. It still doesn't make sense. And we still can't find anybody that will agree with them.
Yeah, I think it's always better to assume incompetence rather than malicious intent. And I think more often than not, it is incompetence rather than malicious intent. But Saints can feel very hard done by because Glen's spot on. First of all, they spend 4 minutes checking the wrong thing, and then they brush off the big decision in seconds, and they just allow a goal on it. We actually watched that on the little screen that we had. I'm sure that everybody watched on Sky had the same benefit that we did for once, rather than it being a 3 p.m. game. But we could see that they went, okay, that line is onside. That was about 4.5 minutes in. We thought, brilliant, the goal was going to stand. And then 30 seconds later, it's gone for something else. So that's utter rubbish. And like you say, it is stacking up. It's going to be really difficult to even out over the course of the season. And you just have to feel sorry for them because it's it could be very expensive. And there are a million reasons why Saints haven't been good enough so far this season themselves. And I'm sure we'll get into them again about the first half on Friday, but it's getting out of hand, and there's no point picking up the phone to Howard Webb anymore because clearly nothing's going to change. So yeah, they can feel aggrieved.
I did see somebody say we're going to end up with more apologies than points, but we've not even had apologies, have we? That's the thing. They're kind of sticking by what they're saying. So it's not even like we've got that in our favour.
I mean, they have probably had now 5 acknowledgements, and they have got 5 points. So they're not far off.
Neck and neck at the moment. Martin, let's get into the actual football then. Let's not let it mask what was a pretty poor first half again. I mean, we were lucky to be just the 1 goal down, no shots on target in that 45 minutes, and lucky to have, I thought, 10 men still on the pitch going into the break.
Yeah, we were really disjointed, I thought, for the first 45 minutes. Obviously, he struggles to settle down on side. and that I don't think helps because Yuki Sugawara hasn't started for weeks. He comes into the side. Ryan Manning was playing really well. He come out of the side, then he come back in. And we just looked a little bit disjointed. Flynn Downs went back into midfield. I was pleased about that. And he did change the system because he went with 2 up top. And I liked it. He brought Adam Armstrong a lot closer to Cameron Archer than Flynn Downs played back in that midfield role. And he's so much better in there. But he is struggling a little bit for confidence Downs at the moment. I don't know if last week maybe knocked him a bit. But yeah, he could have easily walked during the game. We were. I don't think we were that aggressive in the first half, if I'm honest, and we just lacked a bit of shape. And obviously, we didn't have a shot on target. And I think the fans are really disgruntled at halftime. I was annoyed. We struggled to get up the field. We were slow, and we really did. We just didn't get anywhere near their box. They were good, I thought, first half, and I thought they were going to batter us at one stage. Welbeck just kept picking up space, and Matoma is just such a good player. He cuts inside, and he's really hard to mark. And Yuki Sugawara had a tough time against him, and I wasn't surprised by it because every time I've seen Matoma, I think he's magnificent. But yeah, we were lucky to walk in half time as it was. We could have been 3-0 down, I thought, at half time quite easily.
The Brighton goal was an interesting one, Glenn, because that's one we can't really blame on the manager or VAR. That was just poor defending, wasn't it, when that ball comes in and bounces on the penalty spot?
It was, yeah, it's poor defending. I mean, Sugawara seems to have picked up most of the blame because it's obviously his man who scored. But I'm Jack Stevens is wandering lonely as a cloud in the centre of the penalty area. He's not marking anyone. He's not attacking the ball. Harwood-Bellis' positioning has to be looked at as well. He at least has picked up a player, but yeah, it's terrible. And allowing any sort of ball to bounce in the just in front of the 6-yard line is just terrible defending. Really, it came from a quick free kick, didn't it? So I do wonder if we were set properly, not switched on. We've seen that before this season. The goal at Bournemouth was very similar, quick free kick taken, and we didn't really make a decent fist of that and ended up conceding a goal there as well. So yeah, it wasn't brilliant. It was a shame for Joe Lumley because I mean, I was terrified when I saw his name on the team sheet, to be honest, because just obviously, and he started the game reasonably well. I had a bit of luck with Rutter hitting the post and Welbeck putting that header just over. Swore that was in, but. Yeah, he didn't have a chance with that, and again, it's another preventable goal, and the opposition didn't have to work particularly hard to score it, and that's kind of been the underlying theme of our defending for most of the season. But I mean, Sugawara, he is a problem defensively. There's no getting away from that. I mean, he did that dopey thing again, didn't he? Where he didn't seem to know there was a player around him when Matoma nearly scored in the first half. Sugawara gets there first, gets the ball and just passes it to him, which is exactly what he did at Arsenal in that other VAR classic game. So yeah, he's an issue defensively. He just needs to sharpen up, or we need to play him further up the pitch.
But he started the season well, didn't he? I remember he was. Did he get a player of the week, or was it just going forward? He started well.
Yeah, his reputation when we signed him was that he's good going forward, but he's always played as a wing back, I think. And we're kind of playing him right back in a back five, really. I mean, the setup was interesting because the right hand side was different to the left. The left hand side, it was almost like Manning was the left midfielder. When we were defending, but when we were attacking, there was a hybrid thing going on the left-hand side and something different on the right-hand side. So, yeah, Sugawara worries me a little bit, but he's fit and he's not suspended, so he'll be playing against Chelsea. Yeah, there you go.
First name on the team sheet, I expect. Were you surprised, Alfie, there weren't any changes at half-time? I always thought that Flynn Downs might have got hooked at half-time just to try and save the red card. Obviously, gratefully didn't. But there must have been quite a team talk because we managed to get into it, and the second half was a completely different story.
Yeah, I totally agree with Martin and Glenn about the first half because I thought they were really, really poor. Glenn's mentioned the chances. Matoma, Ruta hitting the post more than he did in 3 games for Leeds last season. And they could have been 2, 3, 4 ahead. I probably did expect some changes, but in the end, obviously, the right decision not to bring Flynn Downs off. I guess maybe the only thing counting in Flynn Downs' favour at that point was the fact that he was already suspended for Wednesday anyway. So if he did get sent off, it wasn't like it would be an extra ban. But I think the intensity levels and just they had less of the ball in the second half, Southampton, but they seemed to go forward with it a lot quicker. They were more direct.
Yeah.
They didn't fanny about at the back, and I'm sure that has come from the top and from Russell Martin. But yeah, I really enjoyed their second half performance. They obviously, we spoke about the disallowed goal. They probably should have won it, but also Brighton didn't do much in the second period at all.
No.
And I'm just going to go back and look at the substitutions, because I don't remember sort of thinking any of them went wrong. I think, he obviously brought Flynn Downs off at the perfect time, got the goal, kept him on the pitch. They were absolutely furious about that. Yuki, like Glenn says, came off. And it was Ryan Fraser for me who made a really good impact again. Yeah. And to be fair, Joe Rebo looks good as well. So there's definitely players there from the second half. But yeah, I mean, what we're going to have to sort of mesh together on Wednesday does worry me a little bit. But yeah, I guess we'll see. And also Alex McCarthy not playing. I mentioned last week on the pod about his sort of knee injections. The club sort of told me, it wasn't really to get him through the game. He was fine. Well, clearly a week later it was worse than they let on. But yeah, hopefully it'd be interesting to see what they do on Wednesday. Because if he's back fit, does he come straight back in over Joe Lumley, who didn't do anything wrong? That's the question.
It's not as if McCarthy had a great game against Liverpool, is it?
Well, I did when I first saw the team sheet. I thought maybe that was it. Maybe it was tactically, and he hadn't done so well. But he seemed to do all right though, Martin. And it was his. A lot of I noticed a lot of fans from like some of his previous clubs saying he deserved the chance and that he was a good guy and he's played well for them. So it was nice to see someone make a Premier League debut, and I thought he did all right.
I thought he'd done really well. And Russell's gone on record a few times talking about him in and around the dressing room and in and around the squad. What a good clubman he is, what a good human being he is. And he was important last season, I think, behind the scenes, without any doubt. And he's probably been waiting for an opportunity. He probably didn't expect one to come in the Premier League, and he got it. And I thought he did really well. His distribution's not bad. He's better with the ball at his feet. He's more comfortable around the edge of his 18-yard box, I think he is. And some of the passes that he played were really good. I wouldn't drop him on Wednesday. I'll leave him in, even if Alex is fit. I think he's got a bad knee, Alex. So what's the chances of him being fit? Pretty unlikely. But I think Joe will be fine. Obviously, we need Ramsdale back quickly because he's so important to us. But yeah, I was really impressed with him, Martin.
There's a couple of bits, Glenn, we were talking about last week, like that glimmer of hope after the Liverpool game. I was just going to get your opinion on Friday as well. Have you kind of seen enough there? Do you think there's enough about them that we have got a chance? Because we've been pretty critical up until these last couple of games. But VAR aside, there seems to be a bit of a performance there.
You look at the league table, and there are 3 teams above us who are 4 points ahead of us, which at the end of the day doesn't look like that much. Of course, we've got to sort ourselves out, otherwise it's completely irrelevant. And obviously, as we've kind of alluded to already, Chelsea in midweek is going to be ridiculously difficult to get anything out of that. So, but in general, I've said this from the start of the season. I see us doing well in bits of games, and sometimes we defend okay, sometimes we attack okay. We never seem to do it all in the same game. The one game we did win against Everton, we were probably a little bit fortunate too. We had a few bits of fortune in that game, and did enough to beat what at the end of the day is a very poor Everton side. So, but yeah, I mean, I think they've got to take heart. I mean, Brighton up to second or third in the league, I didn't actually think they were that good. And they won't finish anywhere near that. But we're playing an informed team, and we've gone there with a few players missing, and we've come away with a point, and we probably, we've come away feeling that we should have won. So, yeah, there's got to be some optimism there, but we can't obviously afford to take too many more steps backwards. Because we've done this before, where there's been a glimmer of hope from the performance, and then we've sucked in the next game, and we've had, I mean, Bournemouth came on the back of a couple of decent, sort of like half decent performance against Ipswich, and the half hour against Man United, and then against Bournemouth we were dreadful. Wolves was another one that that was after the Everton game, wasn't it? And
we said that would be a mark of how far we've come.
We went to Wolves and we were dreadful, basically, even allowing for VAR. So yeah, I mean, but you're kind of mad if you're optimistic about our chances of staying up. I mean, because I look at it now and I think we've got to get to sort of at least sort of 14, 15 points by the halfway stage, which is December 28th, I think, when we play Crystal Palace, I think. Or was it West Ham? Can't remember. But, that's exactly halfway and you've played everybody once. And I kind of feel we need to be on at least 14 or 15 points by then. And so we've got, I don't know, 6 games to try and get another 10 points from 6 games. Are we going to do that? Or are we, if we're still on sort of single digit points by Christmas, then it's not happening. And it's incredibly unlikely that we will get out of it. And unfortunately, that's the territory we're in now. It's performances or bits of performances. It's all about getting points on the board. But they've got to take Friday's point as a positive and move on. But I mean, you'd have to be insane to predict we're going to get anything out of Chelsea.
Well, Glenn, I mean, you've experienced it all, obviously, as a Saints fan. All 3 of you have.
Yeah.
Southampton are famous for great escapes. Of course, they are in the 90s, the squad you had. Given that no club has ever survived from this position, let's dream for half a second and say that if they did go on and survive, would this be their greatest escape?
Probably because probably because
definitely
the way football has changed since the 90s. Everyone was a lot closer. The bottom of the league and the top of the league was a lot closer, given the money that they had. It was before the sort of Sky money, which obviously started in 1992. It was before it really kicked in and made a huge difference with the teams at the top against the teams at the bottom. It was years before FFP, so you could spend more money if you wanted to, and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, if we manage to stay up this season, it will be. It will be unbelievable, to be quite honest. And I mean, it's getting to the stage now where if any promoted club stays up, it's seen as a bit of a miracle. But from the position we're in now, I mean, you'd have to be mad to predict it. But whilst there's still sort of like 3 teams within touch and distance, then that's what you got to aim for, isn't it?
Be interested to get your thoughts on this, Martin, because obviously we've been speaking about it quite regularly, and we're having the same discussions every week, coming back to the same old things. Is your opinion that the damage has already been done, and 5 points, is it from 13 games, is not enough?
Yeah, way too much damage done. I expected so much more, and I've said it so many shows I've been on, so many people I spoke to. I knew it was going to be tough. I knew it was going to be really tough. He wasn't helped with the recruitment. We always go back to it. And the recruitment in the summer, just in the final third, they made some really good signings. But I just think in the final third, he was let down left side. He needed another striker, and there was no doubt about that, because it was all where were the goals going to come from? And we were always going to leak those because we let so many in the Championship. We let 64 goals in. We were always going to let goals in, especially the way that he plays football. And I always thought that he would adapt a little bit more than he has done. He's been very stubborn, Russell, and all the fans would say it. He has been stubborn. There's no doubt about it. And whether that he's got good enough players to play the way he wants to play, I don't think he does personally, and I think it will get us relegated. I'm gutted that where we are right now, and the damage for me has been done. Whether they can do some reinforcements in January, they might. Sport Republic and transfer windows don't go together that well, do they? Let's be honest. I think the damage has been done, Martin. I really do.
And do you think that lies with the recruitment, or do you think it is that stubbornness? If we're playing this way of football, but we don't have the players to do it, that is, no matter what they say about it's a journey and it's a long-term plan, that's just madness, isn't it?
Yeah. What is the long-term plan? I would love to know it. There was a bit of talk that Sport Republic are going to put like some sort of statement out in the next few days. I heard it yesterday, whether that's true or not.
True.
To talk about it. Yep. It's not true. But it would be interesting to know what their 10-year plan is. It really would, because for me to yo-yo up and down is so dangerous. That obviously they haven't recruited well enough, like they say, but I think that Sport Republic have to take some responsibility for the recruitment, and then the manager as well. Like he's got a way of playing, and a lot of people think he's naive. Every mainstream pundit says the same, And I must have had 15 texts on my phone, all saying the same thing on Friday night. Why do you persist to play the same way when it doesn't work? And it doesn't always work. How many chances do we give teams? I think we've gifted individual errors more than anybody that have resulted in shots at our goal. It's not good enough. It needs to be better. And I still think we need to find other ways to play football. The shining star, we haven't spoke about him, is Tyler Dibbling, because he was just on another level to anything the other night. He was just magnificent. And as the game went, he got better. He was beating people for fun. We will struggle to keep hold of him. Enjoy him while he can. I'd love to know your opinion of it, but he could be the best thing to come out of our academy since Gareth Bale. I think he is that good.
But this is what we were saying, like the difference between going down this time and going down last time is that we've got a few more sellable assets, and you would, like you say, Sport Republic and spending money wisely don't necessarily go hand in hand, but you would think that we might have more money and not make the same kind of mistakes again. Just want to kind of wrap up on Brighton. We'll do player of the week in just a moment. Anything else, Alfie? There was a little bit of needle between the managers afterwards, which as a fan, I quite like that. I like seeing that.
Yeah, there was. And I think Fabian Herzler did his press conference first, and he was asked very directly about it. What was that argument about? Because I think they sort of came to handbags really on the pitch at full time, didn't they? But I think all throughout the game, Russell Mine was frustrated that he was waving the imaginary card at every tackle, and obviously, ended up getting all the players booked.
Which is one of the biggest dick moves in football, to be honest. To be waving imaginary cards, players doing it is bad enough, and to me, it just should be an automatic yellow card if you do that. And for managers to be doing it as well is just pathetic. But carry on.
And and both managers were booked. Russell Martin obviously felt exactly the same as Glen and responded. And I think Russ has been booked now. That must be his 4th or 5th this season. He's already done a touchline ban, so he's no stranger to the referee's book. But then Fabian came in, press conference, asked about it. He was like, "For me, the game is about respect. That's the way I was brought up. You have to ask him about it." So the same person did ask Russell about it, and he said, "Respect." Talking about respect. He's talking about respect, waving the yellow card around, and all this sort of stuff. A little bit of handbags, a bit of bite, but it's just a bit of fun, really, isn't it? I think Russell Martin's final comment was, "But we're both just trying to win the game, so it doesn't really matter." I think that's fair enough.
I thought he was very reasonable afterwards. Let's do player of the week. No surprise, Tyler Dibbling won last week. I have a feeling that he might end up winning again this week. Glenn, from what you've seen, who was the standout for you?
I'll leave Tyler Dibbling out of it because it almost goes without saying that he's going to win. I mean, he won the award on Sky, didn't he? And I've no reason to think that our fan base will think any different. But I'm going to go for Joe Lumley, actually, because he's just, I mean, I've always called him Mr. Vibes. I just feel like he's a good guy. I don't think he's a particularly good goalkeeper. His career suggests that he's not a particularly good goalkeeper. He's just there, he's a good lad. He's probably gets his round in, good on the golf course, all that sort of stuff.
That's what
nice
we want.
Lad. Yeah, 29 years old. He's never been near the Premier League, and he gets his chance, and he has a really good game. So I like stories like that. It's like it's a bit like Ryan Manning being a Premier League footballer. It just shouldn't happen, but it has. And they, and both those two have done okay. So I'll go for Joe Lumley, and I totally agree that he should stay in the team for Wednesday, where he will need some higher power to help us in that particular game. But
Does anybody know the Gordon Ramsay meme where it's like he's talking to an adult and he says, "You effing donkey," and then he talks to the kid. It's like, "Don't worry, don't worry, you precious, don't worry." I do feel there's a bit of that going on with Joe Lumley, because he did pass it straight to the Brighton attacker at one point in the first half an hour of the game. And if McCarthy had done that, they'd have had effigies of him on the Itching Bridge. So I do think there's an element of that on it. But I mean, I'm going to nominate Ryan Manning for me, who Glenn sort of alluded to, because I said weeks ago, not the only person, but I said weeks ago that he's actually been doing well this season, and I was surprised he came out of the team when he did. Comes back in, he was really good, set the goal up pretty much, and good game.
Some good crosses into the box. It wasn't his fault that there wasn't anybody there to receive them. Martin, so we've got Joe Lumley, Ryan Manning, Tyler Dibbling. Anybody else to add to the list?
Well, I was going to go with Ryan Manning, actually, same as Alfie. I think he's been brilliant since coming in the side. I think he stepped up. I didn't expect him to play like he's been playing. I've had to pick somebody that's not been named. So I'm going to go with Ryan Fraser. I thought the energy that he gave us when he came on was really good. I know he's not massively liked in all of the fan base, but I thought his energy and in his work ethic is really, really good. He'd be an important player on Wednesday night. And Ryan Fraser it is for me.
Okay, nice one. We'll get that poll on social media. And if you're watching live, of course, just add your own suggestions into the comments. So as I mentioned, a couple of games this week. Football under the lights. It's not for everybody. But midweek football is back this week. Chelsea are the visitors to St Mary's. Alfie, I read your piece today. You used the C word, crisis, I think, with the key suspensions. We've got Harwood-Bellis, Downs and Dibbling all suspended. This is going to be the toughest starting 11 that you're going to have to try and predict.
Yeah, well, I mean, it may be a little bit easier in the sense of there aren't many options in a lot of positions. And I'll read out the full list of people who are unavailable. So obviously Aaron Ramsdale, Gavin Bazunu, Harwood-Bellis, Bednarek, Larios, Downs, Yuga Chukwu, who can't face Chelsea, is on loan, Adam Lallana, Dibbling, Ross Stewart, and potentially McCarthy, Smallbone, Amo-Ameyaw as well. So that's potentially 13 players missing. Glenn's already sort of mentioned the fact that 6 of those are in the best 11 without question.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a bit of a patch-up job. And I'd sort of try to have a bit of a guess about what the team might look like. And, I've come up with Lumley, a back 5 of Sugawara, James Bree, Jack Stevens, Carl Walker-Peters and Ryan Fraser. So that's Walker-Peters and Bree sort of playing centre-back. Then Ryan Manning in midfield, Joe Rebo, Matty Fernandez, and obviously Cameron Archer and Adam Armstrong up front if Amo-Ameyaw is not ready. So, I mean, that team, as Glenn said earlier, it is a championship team. It's probably a team that, bar a couple of players, wouldn't get out of the championship. But they have the benefit of sort of, they at least they know each other, they play each other, there'll be some synergy there. And there's guys like James Bree who could come in and, on his cup performances, he deserves a chance. So, he should be fairly confident. Ryan Fraser would have been, 48 hours ago, would have been like an absolute nightmare, but he played all right against Brighton. So, can you take some solace there? And then obviously Ryan Manning has played in midfield in pre-season and maybe once, I think, this season or in Swansea team. So he has done it before. But it is asking a lot, isn't it, of everybody there? It's asking a lot of everybody there. And I don't think there's going to be anybody in that stadium who expects them to get a result. They're going to have a back 4 of three full-backs, a centre-back and a winger, back 5. So, yeah, good luck.
That might be the understatement of the week. We'll get on to Yuga Chukwu in just a moment and his antics this week. Glenn, it's difficult, isn't it, when Alfie's rattling through that side to think that this is going to be anything other than a bit of a pasting.
Yeah, I mean we've got, in my opinion, and this is up for debate. Yeah, probably 7 players who are decent at Premier League level, and 5 of them are missing. So you really only got Walker-Peters and Fernandez as people who have proven to be good enough at this level. So, and as Alfie says, we're going to be bringing in the likes of James Bree, who, yeah, I mean, he's played well in the Carabao Cup, but I mean, God's sake,
top scorer, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, but we're talking about Everton reserves, Stoke reserves, and Cardiff youth team, aren't we? That's who we played in the Carabao Cup. So, and I watched Chelsea play earlier on today against Villa, and their midfield. We're talking about putting Ryan Manning in midfield. Their midfield is Enzo Fernandez, 100 million quid, Casado, 100 million quid, and Romeo Lavia, 50 million quid. That was the 3 they had in midfield. So good luck, Ryan Manning, and whoever else plays in there. So it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible to look at, and you can't imagine. Chelsea have got this, and we're going to talk about Villa in a minute, and the fact that they've got European football to deal with. Chelsea have as well, but it's the Conference League, and they could put their youth team in it and win that. Chelsea aren't going to be resting anyone, I wouldn't have thought, for this particular game. So, the likes of, Cole Palmer, Madueke, Sancho, Neto. I mean, it's just
Nicholas Jackson.
Nicholas Jackson, who we were allegedly linked with a while ago. He's a funny player, a little bit hit and miss, but he's scoring a lot of goals this season. So the annoying thing is that Maresca, it's just one of these characters I find really annoying. But he's getting a good tune out of that squad at the moment. Mind you, I feel like I could probably do that, but fair enough.
No, to be fair, we all had Chelsea down and struggling this season, didn't we? Let's be honest. With 30 players and not really knowing what their team was, all of a sudden they come to St Mary's with a very clear first 11 and a very clear sort of backup for each position.
Has it surprised you, Alfie, that he's managed to do that and how quickly he's got them firing?
I think I was thinking about this earlier today because sort of like based on the Leicester teams that came to St Mary's and that we saw at King Power, clearly he was a good manager, and Saints got absolutely battered by them twice. But it felt like the Leicester fans were never really satisfied with him. Like, I guess by the point of lifting the title, they were, but it felt like throughout the season they weren't massive fans. I don't know if that was just because it wasn't the most entertaining, or I don't know what it was really. But I mean, it's a massive job. Yeah, I'm surprised. He's done unbelievably well, Enzo Maresca. You have to take your hats off because he's going to finish in the top 4 with a squad I thought was going to finish 8th or 9th. So,
I think they're the second best team around at the moment outside of Liverpool.
Yeah,
they're better than City at the moment, and they're certainly better than the other big boys. So yeah, to me, if the league table carries on, or the rest of the season pans out the way it's looking at the moment, they'll finish second. They're a good side.
Our score prediction is going to be interesting for this one. Martin, obviously, Ugochukwu is going to be ineligible to face his parent club, but it seems that he's had a busy week on his social media after not making the squad.
Yeah, didn't all his social media Southampton posts disappear, then reappear? Bit strange.
Has he put them back on now?
They're back on.
I think he's put them back on now. Yeah, he's put them back on.
One of those players who's more interested in his social media than he is about his performances.
Yeah, he needs to focus on his performances, because when I've seen him, I've been desperately disappointed in him. I've got to be honest. I thought he looked all right at the start, but maybe a little bit of an attitude problem there from what I've seen. It's nice to see Che Charles, the man that he's replaced out at Sheffield Wednesday, absolutely blossoming in the Championship. He's been magnificent for them. Every Sheffield Wednesday fan I speak to said that he has been brilliant. So at least we're going to have a really good midfielder next season when we're back in the Championship with Che Charles, because I didn't think he got the chances that he deserved last year, and we didn't trust him anywhere near enough. I think it's an uphill battle against Chelsea. Centre-back would be interesting. A few people keep asking me, I've had a lot of DMs about it, is Charlie Taylor. He's nowhere to be seen. Somebody that can play centre-back, strong lad. He's got a bit about him. He was in and out the side. Totally disappeared. Do we know it? What's happened to him?
So he played a game for the 21s and then came off at half-time with a bit of a niggly injury. But since then, he's just not being picked for not being rated reasons. I asked Russell Martin about it, and he said that we've changed shape to this sort of 5 at the back, and it doesn't suit him. Basically, he's been a victim of that, and he's just got to be ready to come back in when we need him. So it's one of those sort of Russell Martin exclusions where he's definitely in there with the he's honourable mention. Sort of Nathan Wood could come in on Wednesday, definitely, and Charlie Taylor's in there as well. He could definitely come in instead of James Bree, sort of that left centre back role. But it's just one of those where with Russell, he does this with players, and they don't come back in for a while. You sort of wonder where they are. But yeah, he just has tactical reasons.
He's got the experience, Glenn, though, hasn't he? That's why he was signed.
Yeah. And when we signed him, it was one of those ones where it was a free transfer, so it wasn't costing a hell of a lot of money. Obviously the wages you got to pay, but it wasn't a signing to get anyone excited, but it was like, this is a proven Premier League player who can slot in, and we didn't really have an out and out left back, because the assumption was that Ryan Manning would be good enough to play in the Premier League. So
the assumption on Ryan Manning was that he might leave as well in the summer. They were sort of thinking he would probably leave the club, but it never ended up happening. So it was like a ready-made replacement in advance.
Yeah, and Dyche's Burnley were a solid team, and he's a solid defender. He played 8 years in the Premier League, so he's not that old. He's only 30, I think. So yeah, you would think in this sort of scenario we're in at the bottom of the league with an injury and suspension crisis, he would certainly play on Wednesday. But if he doesn't, then it does kind of point that there's something else going on.
Well, his last appearance was that Leicester game, I believe. So I think there's been a couple who haven't really featured.
Player called out then.
No, I don't actually. I asked the people at the club, a couple of people at the club, this, and they don't know the answer for sure, obviously, because Russell Martin only knows who he's talking about in his own head. But I don't think that he was the one who was called out. But look, we don't know, do we? But I'm pretty sure it wasn't him.
Do you mind, Alfie, before we do score predictions, can you just clear up about the loans? Because there's been a lot of stuff that I've read this week about the loans, and we'll just cancel their loan in January and send them back, and we'll get somebody else in. But it's not quite as simple as that.
No, so it's normal practice with the loans. I believe that is in these 2 cases as well, that if you agree to a season-long loan, you can only get out of that if the club and the player agrees as well. So we had this case with Mason Holgate in January last year. They knew that they didn't want or didn't need Mason because they had enough options in that position from the 1st of January, but they had to wait until deadline day before another club, Sheffield United, agreed to take him on, and that went brilliantly well. So the problem is that's going to be the same case again this season. If they want to lose Leslie Ugochukwu or Maxwell Cornet, then West Ham and Chelsea will have to agree to that, and the players will have to agree to that as well. So, if they're not playing at all, then the players are going to be happy, but the club are going to want the wages covered and whatever fees are paying covered as well. So, particularly in the case of someone like Maxwell Cornet, I think Ugochukwu could still be useful to Southampton. I know that you were quite scathing on him there, Martin, and he has been poor, but he looked better in the Liverpool game, and at least he's in a position where they need him. Maxwell Cornet, they don't need Maxwell Cornet. They've got 5 options who are similar to him. Whereas at least with Leslie, it's like if Downs isn't available, he actually could be someone who comes straight in. So, if I was the club, I think Russell Martin said to me they're going to assess Maxwell's game time over the next 4 weeks, and then the suggestion was they'll try and negotiate a deal to get him back. And I think that's sensible because, you've only got 2 loan slots. And if someone like Evan Ferguson comes available, that turned out to be bogus. Someone like that comes available, they're going to be much more useful than Cornet. I think signing him in the first place was it was on deadline day. I mean, he was literally signed an hour after the deadline, so it was as last minute as it could be. I think they felt like they needed a different profile, and if he could be fit, he could be useful. He came in with a minor sort of calf injury, and I guess he just hasn't bounced back really. He hasn't been useful, so that one hasn't worked.
We're back to poor recruitment again, aren't we? We need to move on and talk about the Villa game. Before we do that, let's do some score predictions. Let's pluck some numbers out of the air. Martin, would you like the honour of going first whilst Glen does his sums?
Well, I remember the 6-0 really well under Ralph Hasenhüttl.
Oh, God.
When Thomas Tuchel was the manager, wasn't he, at Chelsea that day, the New England manager, that actually tore us to bits that day. I don't think it'd be that heavy. I go 3-0. I don't think we'll score. I go 3-0 Chelsea for this one.
3-0. Glen?
It's funny you mentioned that 6-0. That game was actually, for me, worse than the 9-0 against or either of the 9-0s. Because that game, Chelsea could have scored 15. Mm-hmm. That was so bad.
Was that when Timo Werner would just trip over the ball every single time he got it?
Yeah, I think he hit the post from 3 yards twice in the first 5 minutes, and Ralph was wandering up and down thinking, do I need to change this? No.
Great days.
And then he did nothing, and then within 20 minutes we were 2-0 down and it was dead. And it was awful. And the other thing I remember about that game is Mason Mount. Yeah, because obviously he's from Portsmouth, giving it the big one. Glad to see his career's gone the way it deserved to go in the last couple of years. But anyway, moving on. Wednesday, I can't, like Martin, I can't see a score, and it's just pick a number that you think Chelsea will go for. So I feel exactly the same as Martin. I don't see any reason to say anything different. I'll say 3-0 Chelsea as well.
3-0. Alfie, do you want to mix it up? Do you think we'll get a goal at least?
Yeah, the problem is I want to go 4-0 just because I don't want to go 3 as well. And it won't, I think, more than 2. But Southampton, I don't know, this season, since the Bournemouth game, the one thing that I really do give credit to them for, and we're clutching at straws a little bit, right? But they don't, Glenn mentioned it the other week, they don't go under, they don't get hammered, they don't sort of lose their way in games. Like they could have been sort of 3 or 4-0 down at Brighton, and yet they still sort of came back and they didn't get swallowed alive at any point. So I just wonder, what that counts for. And you look at the games at Liverpool, the best team to give Liverpool a game in the last sort of 5 or 6 they've had, really tough games. Man City, all right, the 1-0 defeat to Man City looks bad now. Probably should have beat them 2 or 3-0. But even Arsenal, they went up against Arsenal. But I don't know. I just wonder if it's 5 changes too many this on Wednesday, and the quality is going to show. So I will go for a 4-0 for Chelsea.
Okay, fair dues. Well, on Saturday, we travel to Villa Park for what will be another tough away game. To help us preview this one, Chad Williams from the Villa Forever podcast is joining us. Chad, thank you for coming on. Going to talk to you about the game. Tell us a little bit about your podcast first, if you don't mind.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you all of you guys for inviting me onto your show. And yes, I'm a Villa Forever podcast. I started the Villa Forever podcast about 20 months ago now. And I thought the idea of combining by Northern Aston Villa to spread awareness of a condition called Duchenne muscular dystrophy. It is a muscle wasting condition. It's a genetic condition. It affects all the muscles, and it affects boys, and it's 100% fatal. And that's why, for me, it's very important. I keep raising awareness about the condition. It's important to get the word out there. Also, I'm a pretty much talk shows. I have a lot of good guests on my show. And it's gone strength to strength.
It sounds great, and I'm really pleased that you've joined us tonight. And I would encourage anybody to check out your podcast and do a little bit of research into it. I was going to say life under Emery's a bit up and down at the moment, isn't it? I mean, there was a time when you were bottom of the table with us, and I think we both lost our managers at the same time, and then we were envious of how well you were doing. But what have you made of the last few games? Because it's been a bit tough.
Well, at the moment, we're going through a bad patch at the moment. But that's to be expected. I think there are a lot of games, especially in the Champions League as well. But at the beginning of the season, I thought we started quite well. But you can see now, I think, the Champions League is really affecting us now. Another thing that I didn't like as well is the last few games as well. The same mistakes seem to be happening. And we sort of need to learn from those mistakes. And they've cost us games.
Well, you're in good company because we spent the last few weeks talking about exactly the same things.
Well, at least you know how we feel.
It's been an interesting run for Villa, hasn't it, Alfie? Because we they were flying at a time, and as we were sort of alluding to earlier on, maybe when they're battling on both fronts, it's going to cost them a little bit, and that league form it's not going to give us any hope, is it? But I'm sure it's going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, I think it's one of those runs that's gone under the radar just because of Man City failing to win in that time as well, really. Because I had no idea that Villa hadn't won in 8 until today. Until I watched that, and you see that on Sky Sports, and I just sort of assumed they were just up there, and they've got a decent squad. I think Glen sort of said it before we came on air. I think it's thin in some areas, and I think that certainly up front they had sort of John Duran, who was coming on scoring goals every week. They've got Morgan Rogers, Ollie Watkins.
Yeah.
They are players to be envious of. But you just go back and look at their games, and I do think it's just the classic case of the Champions League. And I think Brighton struggled when they were in the Europa League, and for like a medium to big sized club, it's a tough ask. When they haven't got the hundreds of millions of any other team. But I don't know what Chad can tell us about Chelsea, because obviously.
Well, the thing is as well, you got look at Man City. They're going for a bad patch at the moment, so we're not the only team that are going through it. But we just need to know. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it runs deeper than we think. Maybe so it's going on the dressing room, or maybe we need a tactical tweak or something. Maybe.
We've obviously got Chelsea on Wednesday, so I'd be interested to get your thoughts on that game and that result today. What kind of went wrong?
Well, I was really disappointed. I mean, defending just wasn't good enough. And the first goal, to be honest, actually, I thought we should have actually put it as a foul. But the other goals, though, there's no excuse. And the thing is, at Aston Villa, there's a level of expectation of what we expect. As Villa fans, we expect better.
The difference is, I guess, we're making mistakes and we're having issues with VAR, but we don't actually expect better. We're kind of where we thought we were going to be. So, Martin, I think you kind of mentioned earlier on that they've just looked a shadow of a team that they were for you. What's your take on it all right now?
Yeah, I thought they were brilliant before the Champions League got underway. They were playing some brilliant football. They even started the Champions League campaign really well, didn't they? They were brilliant. They've got some good players. I really like Ollie Watkins. I think he's a a brilliant striker. He looks like he's played a lot of football, and they said that he's played more than pretty much anyone in their squad recently. The goalkeeper got injured today. I don't know how long he's out for. That will be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to going to Villa Park, actually. I've not been there since the FA Cup semi-final when we beat Watford that day many years ago. So I'm
was
looking
that
forward to the
James
trip.
Beattie, was it, or was it Brett Ormerod? I can't remember. It was
Brett Ormerod.
Both of
Was
them,
it Brett
I think,
Ormerod? They
Yeah.
both scored, did
Yeah.
they? What a day
I think
that
it was
was.
an own goal. I think one was given as an own goal eventually. Yeah.
And I guess the good news is, Martin, we'll have had a few players rested because they're all suspended on Wednesday night.
Yeah, we can bring everybody back in, can't we? Which will hopefully be nice. But they've got Brentford in midweek, and that'd be a tough game because Brentford are
What
fine
do
at
you
the moment.
guys make a Southampton so far?
How long have we got?
I think the overriding feelings, obviously, that they've been the masters of their own downfall a lot of the time. They've sort of been in a lot of games, and they've given a lot of good teams a go, but then they falter when they play the sort of teams around them. So, I think when they go to Villa Park, they're going to play in a very clear way. They're going to try and win the game, and I think I don't necessarily think that it's a game that some fans should fear, because, like Martin said, bringing everyone back in, it'd be probably a good time to rest Tyler Diblin, and particularly with Tyler Diblin's story regarding the fact I think he grew up a Chelsea fan, and obviously moved to Chelsea. It's not a bad midweek game for him to miss, actually, with all the inevitable noise and sort of media stuff that will go around that with a young player that good. And like I say, Flynn could probably do with a rest. He's somebody who misses games every now and then with little niggly injuries that, a week off for him. So I think that going to Villa Park, Saints fans will potentially feel they could do something.
I'm going to ask you for a score prediction in a minute, Chad. So just mull that over for us. We've had some good games at Villa Park then over the years, haven't we?
I remember Danny Ings had been on fire a few years ago, and we won 4-3. Was it? I think it was. It was a while ago. Jack Grealish was still playing for Villa at the time, but no, it's. I mean, it's fair to mention we've had some shocking ones there as well during
the last two.
During Ralph's eventual demise, we went up there and Villa. I think Steven Gerrard was still the manager.
Yeah, the last one.
So
Villa. Forget about Gerrard.
Yeah, so Villa were not great, and it's kind of parallels with this game, because Villa were in poor form then, and they're in poor form now, and we went to that game with Ralph Hasenhüttl and did nothing, and we just allowed Villa to do what they wanted. They scored 1-0. We did nothing. So, I watched Villa's game today against Chelsea, and yes, playing a very good side, but I thought Villa were very poor. I thought they looked leggy.
I agree.
Yeah, they didn't look the sort of team that you'd be frightened of, and if they don't get a positive result against Brentford in midweek, then we can certainly go there, and we're playing a bang out of form side.
I think it's the defence that worries me. We're conceding far too many goals. I think Southampton, you could get at us maybe, I think.
Yeah, I mean, shots on target have been an issue for us just generally, Chad. But what do you? Would it be a strange atmosphere? Because I think if you don't get the result midweek, are the fans going to turn, or is the Champions League giving them enough credit in the bank?
I mean, you might get a few section supporters that might, but I think we're going to do it. They need to get behind Unai Emery and the team. I don't think it's going to help. They're going to get fully back in. But I do think that game, though, it's going to be like an edgy atmosphere, I think. Let's say if you get to half time and say, we don't score, so then we start to get nervous energy. I personally think the first goal is important for Villa.
Yeah. I think for Aston Villa fans, obviously, Chad, you'll know more than I will, but I think that they can't be turning yet. I mean, I think every team that goes into a competition, particularly the Champions League, where they're playing teams like Bayern Munich and Juventus, you have to expect and appreciate that there's going to be a downturn in the Premier League for them. And that's not to say that you can end up finishing 18th, and that's fine. But it's so difficult for a squad who it isn't one of the big ones to compete on both fronts. So I would expect Villa Park to be behind their team for a long time to come.
I was going to do score predictions, but I'm thinking maybe instead we just do what the VAR issue will be. Are we going to go for like dubious offside, red card missed, penalty not given? Maybe we'll just like do a poll on that on social media instead. Let's get some score predictions. Martin, you're obviously heading up to Villa Park, and they're not in a great run of form at the time of recording anyway. So how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do against Brentford in midweek. I believe that one's at home as well. I think it'd be tough, but I think that we're going to need to get a win. Whatever happens, somewhere along the line in the next week or so, we're going to need to get a win if we're going to have any chance. Not that it's probably game over, but I want to put us down for a win, Martin. I want to give us a win.
Wow.
First away win, 2-1. 2-1 away win for me. Cameron Archer to go there and score in the Midlands would be magnificent against his former club. And Adam Armstrong, I think, has been playing okay recently. I think he's finding a little bit of form, a bit of consistency in the side. I'm going to put him down for a goal as well. So 2-1 Saints.
A very little bit.
Alfie?
I will go for a 1-1 draw. But I mean, if you'd asked me 24 hours ago, I definitely would have said Villa to win. But just having watched them against Chelsea and actually looking at how turgid their form has been, I'll go for a 1-1 draw.
Fair dues. And Glenn?
The only game we won this season was when I predicted a 1-0 win against Everton. So I'm going to go for that, even though I'm going to go for 1-0 win for Saints. Even though I look at the Villa squad and I see players like Konza, Pau Torres, Tielemans, Rodgers, McGinn. They're all the good players, and on paper that they should be too strong for us. I mean, I feel Villa are a little bit. They're suffering almost from overachieving a little bit. When they beat Bayern Munich, was it in the Champions League? I think that raised expectations. And
special that was there.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, no, it was a great game. I enjoyed that. But I think John Duran coming on and scoring every time he set foot on the pitch, that probably made things seem a little bit better than they were, because you can't keep, you're never going to keep doing that. So maybe they are. I mean, obviously they're out of form at the moment, but maybe they are sort of finding their level a bit. I'll be interested in the fans, because I found this about Brighton on Friday. There's a little bit of entitlement creeps in, and they expect to beat teams like Southampton at home. And you can't really blame them for expecting to beat the team that's bottom of the league. But if we go there and start the game relatively strong, yes, we got a bit lucky in the first half hour against Brighton, because the game could have been dead. Yeah. But if we can go up there and start well against Villa, then I don't see any reason why, having watched them this week, today rather, I see no reason why we can't go up there and get something. So I'll optimistically go for a 1-0 shout.
All right. And Chad, before we let you go, can I get a score prediction from you?
So I'm gonna go at 2-1 Aston Villa.
2-1 Villa.
I do think we will concede. We don't keep clean sheets, but I think we'll win. I think we'll beat you, though. I think.
All right. Well, you don't keep clean sheets. We don't score goals, so this could be a really interesting game. So it's the Villa Forever is the podcast, and that's the number 4 in the middle. So if you want to go and check out Chad and his podcast, it's Villa Forever.
And also, I'm doing some fundraising as well for Acorns Children's Hospice. And actually, on my X account, I've actually got a link. So far, I've raised over £700. So if anyone wants to contribute, even as little as £2, then please go to my page. And also, I'm announcing a chocolate hamper winner on the 5th of December. So you can enter that competition as well.
Christmas present sorted there. We will share that on our social media as well. So wish you all the best of luck with that, and well done on raising that money so far. So cheers for coming on, Chad, and enjoy the rest of the season, won't you?
Yeah. Thank you.
Well done, Chad. Thank you.
We will share that link on our social media. Don't forget you can follow the Total Saints podcast on all the social media platforms. We are at Total Saints Pod, and check out the merch store as well. We've got the online shop. There's a couple of nice little bits in there for Christmas, including a Christmas jumper that we've designed. It's shop.totalsaints.co.uk, where you can find out more. We're also on Patreon. That's where you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. Just head to patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. And each of the tiers comes with different perks, including some weekly shout outs for patrons in our Francis Benali and our Mick Shannon tiers. So thank you to Dave Melton, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nikki Nicholson, Southampton NY, Drew Dyer, and James Kibbe. They're all in our Francis Benali tier. And also thank you to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Higston, Phil Cook, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrup, Matt Hall, Mark Littlewood, Mike Etheridge, James Bobin, and John Bevin, who are in our Mick Shannon tier. Thank you to Paul Castle Associates and Steamtown Brewery for sponsoring TSP this season. Thanks to Martin for joining us. Thanks to Glenn and Alfie as well. I've run out of mine. I've got to restock this week. Read into that what you will. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you again next time.